trauma dun sa pinagdaanan ng father ko, kaya mukhang walang nagdedeklara ngayon, di ba?
True.
So whether it's admin or opposition, no one's declaring, which is very weird. I mean, in a few months, magfa-file na, pero wala pa rin nagsasabi na I am running for higher office. I am running for president or vice president. Buti nga ngayon, may nagde-declare na natatakbo for senator eh. Siguro, hopefully, in the coming months, may magde-declare na rin for the two top
Can you
offices.
see your party being part of Isang Bayan? It's a coalition eh. Can you see your party being part of this group that's really identified with the opposition?
It's a possibility. And, di ba, we've talked and nakikita ko naman talaga yung sincerity nila in helping our country. So, tignan natin yung proseso na gagawin nila to pick their candidate.
But ma'am, we
Talking
also
about
kasi
your
interestingly,
dad.
Interestingly kasi Isang Bayan and well, the Liberal Party is not even a convener
Part
of
of
Isang
Isang
Bayan. In fact, the Liberal Party has been critical of the processes that Isang Bayan is undergoing right now, yung selection process nila. So in a way, parang might be a completely different political animal.
Baka nga eh. Actually, parang nako-COVID din ata yung politika natin. Di ba?
What do you mean? What do you mean by that exactly? Anong
Hindi, parang ang daming mutations, di ba?
variants.
Variants,
Ang daming variants.
Ang daming variants, di ba? Ang daming unknown. Ang daming parang, it's so hard to read kung ano yung mangyayari sa 2022 na alam naman natin, di ba parang sanay na tayo na every election, ito yung template, right? But with 2022, from the way to campaign, yung political alliances, parang magulo, di ba? I mean, saka nakakita na yung admin, nagkakagulo din sila dun sa partido nila, and then sa opposition, parang ganun din. So, parang labo-labo yung nangyayari ngayon sa 2020.
Do you really feel that way? I mean, because I don't know if we're just overly cynical, but the more basic instinct for a lot of people is to say, eto na naman. That none of this is actually new. Do you, na yung labo-labo, even the ruling coalition, nagkakagulo, ambitions of individuals are taking precedence, and you know, we have analysts saying parties have never been important anyway. But do you really see anything different about how things are shaping up in 2022 relative to past national elections?
I think, lalo na with this presidential election compared noong 2016. Kasi diba noong 2016, alam na naman natin kung sino yung makakalaban ng father ko during the 2016 elections, diba? More or less clear kung sino yung mga candidates. But this time around, yung sa admin, hindi nila alam kung sino yung i-field nila. Sa opposition, hindi rin nila alam kung sino yung ilalagay nila. Kaya parang ang daming question mark.
Talking about your dad, what are your dad's plans? Are you privy to those? I mean, I just wonder.
Actually, I don't know whether he will run for any position sa 2022. It's an option for him. Malakas pa naman siya, and he's very much active when it comes to public service. Kumbaga, parang ano na ata yan nananalaytay na dun sa
dugo niya. What about your brother? I ask because, you know, the Binay family is a dynasty, at least in Makati, no? So I'm just wondering what your political plans are.
Yeah, I think my brother is not running then for any position.
Oh, okay. So yung dad mo ang possible. And,
so I mean,
and of course,
that's
si
an
Abby,
option.
no?
And I guess my sister will just run for re-election.
Yes. Okay. How do you feel as a Binay when people call your family a political dynasty? Does that hurt?
No, kasi iba yung ano ko thinking ko dun sa yung the way we got this position, you know. I mean, at the end of the day, we went through a process. We got elected by the people, di ba? And ako, it was not easy for me. Nung tumakbo ako nung 2013, nung tumakbo nga ako ng 2019, muntikan pa akong hindi makapasok, di ba? So, it's not a given na just because I'm a Binay, automatic mananalo ko for any position. I need to introduce myself to the people. I need to tell them what I can do. And at the end of the day, decision pa rin nila yun, di ba? So, hindi siya yung parang royalty na mamanahin mo yung titulo.
Yes, but at the same time, you do have to acknowledge that there is a great advantage to the incumbency. Like when a family has somebody, let's say in the past, as vice president, somebody in Congress, and then somebody running the city, and so that doesn't happen by accident, and that's not all ascribed to just, you know, we worked hard. I mean, not to take away from the hard work that you do put in, but not just speaking for yourself, but practically the majority of people in Congress, for example, the reality is it's a few families that keep changing hands. That's our definition of a dynasty. And we ask this siguro by way of, because we can't, it's very hard to ask somebody from Congress who is not part of a dynasty. Chances are we will have to ask somebody who is part of a political clan, who is entrenched as a political dynasty in their, I guess the question is, how do we get out of this cycle? Congress does not even want to fulfill its constitutional mandate to pass an anti-dynasty law.
Well, at the end of the day, baka it's about educating the voters na meron pa silang pwedeng pagpilian. Kasi, babalikan ko lang. For example, sa Pasig, di ba? Natalo niya yung incumbent na mayor who's part of a political family. So it can happen. It's not, for me, it's not automatic I guess we need to empower our voters na hindi rin naman porket yun yung titignan nila talaga yung quality nung kandidato beyond their last name.
So do you think this is something that does not really need legislating?
Well, hindi. Kasi nandun sa constitution niya na kailangan na kailangan
pero
talagang
nothing's happening. Yes,
Wala lang yung political will.
Oo.
Yun lang yung nagiging problema. But at least dun sa SK, we were able to introduce parang may anti-dynasty. Yeah. Meron.
It's a start, yes.
I mean, it's a start. It's a start, diba?
Senator, balikan ko lang yung isang bayan kasi sinasabi nila, para daw matalo yung anyone to be endorsed by President Duterte, you need a unified opposition. You think at this point na nakikita natin ngayon, this is still possible?
I guess baka hindi talaga unified opposition. Baka just one candidate who can go against dun sa admin candidate.
Pero
baka it's more of that.
You're not seeing a one-on-one fight. Mukhang na naman to Di ba? Multi-cornered.
Pero maybe hindi ganon ka multi-cornered. Yeah. Baka hindi ganon kadami.
Pero
And baka the geographic might be different also. Kasi, di ba, noong 2016, halos majority came from Luzon, kaya nabiyak yung vote ng Luzon
Senator, hindi naman sa pinipilit na ito, but I do want to get back to Isang Bayan. Hindi ko nababalikan yung Liberal Party. You're very clear about how you feel about the Liberal Party. But you also said, yung Isang Bayan, unang-una, kinausap nyo.
Wait, sandali, yung sa Liberal Party, I'm not closing my door.
Yes, exactly.
To them, but we need to discuss things first before we talk about 2022.
Okay, but my question is, doon sa in the larger Isang Bayan coalition, who there is credible to you? Who do you listen to doon sa Isang Bayan?
Sino? Well, si Justice Scorpio. Sino pa ba nandun?
Morales.
yung kasi nakatrabaho ko na si Justice Carpio eh. And then sila Brother Armin, si Attorney Calleja din, and syempre si Congressman Colmenares.
Well, because you yourself mentioned it, no, that what happened to your father in 2016 in having declared early. When you look back to that, do you now agree with? I mean, I just wonder, do you think it's politically not astute to actually declare early? Do you think that lessons to that effect were learned from that experience?
Feeling ko whether or not he declared early, naka-program na yung attack against my family eh.
Oh, really? Why
Yeah.
is that? Why did you think that? And why do you think
looking back, yung kakaupo pa lang ng dad ko, I remember may nagkwento na parang, ganito yung magiging strategy nila. Tatanggalin nila si Chief Justice, tapos tatanggalin nila si Senate President Enrile, and then the next move is, they will impeach your dad. So, parang kami, ayaw namin maniwala. Kasi, how can you do that? Tatanggalin mo yung Chief Justice through impeachment, di ba? Parang, do we want to go through that process again? And then, si Senate President Enrile, parang ang daming steps, di ba? But, look what happened. Natanggal nga nila si Chief Justice Corona then, and then si SP Enrile was also removed as Senate President. And then,
wow. So you think this was an orchestrated plan from the get-go?
I think so.
Okay. Wow.
Kasi may ganun ng warning sa amin eh. I mean, early on, I guess mga 2010, 2011, and parang kami, I don't think they'll do that kasi di ba, nakita naman natin yung how my father was a loyal soldier of the Aquino family, di ba? So, bakit naman nila gagawin yan sa amin? Hindi naman talaga kami kaaway ng Aquino. Di ba? Hindi naman kami kaaway.
So at the start, there was disbelief on the part of your father. Kasi nga yun ang sinasabi nila, at the start, ang tingin ni Yuel, ang tingin ng mga tao, parang anak-anakan niya actually si Noynoy Aquino eh.
Yes.
So sa umpisa, there was disbelief on the part of your dad na mangyayari yung mga sinabi sa inyo.
I guess disbelief dun sa whole family. And hindi lang to, yung right after manalo ng dad ko, parang you can sense na naging iba yung treatment din sa kanya. I guess kasi masyado atang hindi expected na mananalo siya eh.
Yeah, hindi siya yung candidate.
Hindi siya yung candidate. So, yun, muntika na rin mangyari sa amin yung scenario na nangyari kay Vice President Robredo sa oath-taking niya. I mean, that was also a scenario for us during noong 2010. But, it didn't happen.
Ma'am, let me go further back dun sa your dad's old party, PDP Laban. You did mention that very briefly kanina. Well, the PDP Laban was built on the backs of human rights lawyers. I wonder lang at this particular point in time how your dad, your family feels about what happened to PDP Laban. What your opinion is of what has become of the party that your dad helped to found?
Hindi ko alam kung paano ba yun? I'm speechless. I guess kasi at some point, nawala na rin yung prinsipyo dun sa partido, di ba? At the end of the day, nagpagamit naman talaga sila, di ba? Para magkaroon ng vehicle si President Duterte to run for president. So, I guess, ito yung consequence of that action.
When isang bayan approaches you and they say, we're talking to you because among other things, we like your pronouncements, we like how you've taken position on certain things. You would think that speaks to your values. So moving forward, anybody who wants to talk to you, what are the baseline values where you would set that? I mean, not just you, even deriving from your father, his history with PDP Laban. Every time we talk about PDP Laban, we talk about its history of being against the authoritarian, being for good governance, being for human rights and democracy, and so on. For you, what are the baseline values that will bring you to the table, at least?
Ako, right now, I'm looking for somebody who can really do something with our problem with COVID-19. That's one. And then number two, yung may concept of continuity and healing. Kasi, di ba, nakita naman natin, every time we elect a president, parang yung number one agenda niya is to get back at the former president. Maybe that is something that we shouldn't continue anymore. yung ganong practice na pag umupo pa lang, ang una mo nang gagawin is lahat nung ginawa nung former president, kahit okay siya, itigil yan, di ba? Wala tayong sense of continuity, which is very sad. Isipin na yung NEDA will only plan every 6 years. Kasi daw, based from their experience, kahit mag-plan sila ng 20 years, hindi rin nasusunod. Kasi tuwing nagpapalit na yung presidente, gusto every 6 years lang yung plano. Ay, di ba that's so sad? Kasi ibig sabihin nun, wala tayong long-term planning. It's always pang 6 years lang.
Okay.
Avenger mentality.
Avenger mentality.
The Avengers.
Or Thanos, burahin mo muna lahat.
Yeah.
Burahin mo muna lahat.
Balikan ko lang din siguro yung PDP Laban, di ba? My dad left the party kasi nire-respeto din naman niya na that party was really started by the father of Sen Coco. And, nakakalungkot din na at this point, baka mawala pa kila Senator Pintel yung PDP Laban, di ba? Sad. But I guess maybe that's a consequence of certain actions that the party had to make.
Okay. Senator Nancy Binay, ma'am, thank you for joining us tonight. We hope to have you again.
Maraming salamat
Thank
po.
you.
Thank you, Senator Nancy.
Thank you. Ingat.
Ingat po.
Maraming po.
Thank you.
Please stay with us. We will be right back.
Welcome back, the Chiefs here on One News. Now joining us is Comelec spokesperson, Attorney James Jimenez. Good evening, Attorney Jimenez.
Evening.
Hi, sir. Good evening po.
Sir, so ano?
Po, good evening.
Hi, good evening, sir.
Evening.
Ma'am Gucci. Good evening, Ma'am Ami.
Attorney Jimenez, kamusta po ang registration so far?
Maganda kasi lampas na tayo sa expectations natin. We expected around 4 million registrants for the new voters. Parang nasa 4.3 na tayo ngayon.
Wow.
And as far as the current tally is concerned, we're at 60 million voters na, no? So we're on track to reach 61 by the end of September.
How does that compare to the numbers in the 6 years ago? And define new voters.
New voters are voters who have recently turned 18.
Okay, so talagang first-time voters talaga.
First-time voters yan. Oo.
Kasama ako doon.
Ngayon,
Hindi,
ito yung 4,000
gusto
natin,
ko.
yun yung 4 million natin. Because, Robbie, pwede ka rin first-time voter kahit na 94 ka na eh. Right? I mean, as long as you haven't registered before. But in terms of the metrics that we're using now, yung 4 million na yan yung ka-18 lamang.
Oh, hindi ka kasama.
That's a very specific population that we're looking for.
Sir, so yung 4.3 is
Yeah.
for those who turned 18 lang. What about those na napurga? Those who failed to vote so many elections past and were purged from the list.
Right. Yan yung 7 million na sinasabi, di ba? Parang I think so far about 500,000 have actually reactivated.
Okay.
Now, remember, hindi lahat nung natanggal dapat bumalik, right? Marami diyan natanggal because hindi na talaga sila bumoboto ng matagal na, or some of them yung iba pumanaw na yan siguro. Yung iba lumipat sa overseas. Doon na sila nagpaparehistro. So kaya sila natatanggal. So ayan. But right now, that's one particular area that we're looking at. And then it actually tracks, no? Because normally every elections bumabalik tayo to the previous level and then ini-exceed natin. But right now, with the impact of the pandemic, malamang, we were only able to return to the previous level, which is 61 million. And we'll see kung ma-exceed pa natin yan, if we can go up to 62 million. But again, right now, we're looking at 61 million as the most likely number that we're going to end up in for 2022.
Kumusta
So
yung
in a way-
prospect ng mobile application app nyo? Nag-pilot na kayo eh. Kaya lang pupunta pa sa Comelec office para ma-download yung app eh.
Right.
Siya.
Maganda po yung uptake nung app. Explain ko lang yan, Ma'am Ami, kung bakit kailangan magpunta ng Comelec office, no?
Oo.
Kasi ang point ng app is precisely to wean us from dependence on internet connections.
Oo.
Kasi kung downloadable yan, ibig sabihin, kailangan mo pa rin ng internet connection. Right? And we want to focus on people na walang internet connection. So basically, so kailangan mong side-to-side na transfer, no? From phone to phone. Now, one other issue that I'm sure you noticed was being talked about ay yung practice ng side loading. People are afraid of side-loaded apps kasi dyan nga naman pumapasok yung mga malicious apps, no? Yung mga bad programs, right? One of the effects of having the app available only at the Comelec office is you can be sure na yan lang ang app na makukuha mo sa amin. Because remember, we're not in the business of making apps. This is just the one app that we have. So, yan lang ang app na makukuha mo sa Comelec office. So that's the only app that you can sideload nang wala kang fear. Kasi alam mo saan ang galing eh. Walang malware yan kasi sa amin galing yan, right? So cutting off the download link does two things, right? Number one, it emphasizes and prioritizes people without internet connections. And second, it assures people that even if it's a side-loading app, it's not something that you download from an app store, naalagaan naman pa rin yung security mo. Kasi nga, again, you're getting it from an authorized source. Parang iPhone. You can only get an iPhone from an authorized reseller, right? Precisely because they want to make sure na yung kanilang yung quality ng goods nila are not compromised. Ganun din sa amin. You can think of it in those terms as well, no? You can only get this app at the Comelec office because Comelec is the issuing entity. Kami ang naglabas niyan. So kami lang din ang magbibigay sa inyo.
So, kumusta yung response? Yung mga, so far, it's a pilot na, kumusta naman yung response?
Maganda po. And in fact, we're looking to expand to the whole of NCR because right now we're just doing 500 cities. we're looking to expand to the whole of NCR by July. Right? So, ibig sabihin, malakas yung uptake ng mga tao. In fact, on the day that we launched it, on Tuesday, parang ilang oras pa lang namin na-announce yun, libo-libo na ang nakapag-download at nakasubok, no? So, again, two things really drive traffic to this app, no? Number one is the fact that you don't need an internet connection anymore, and number two, that you don't need a printer, right? Because yun talaga yun eh, na wala ka nang alalahanin. So far maganda po yung result at saka yung response ng mga tao.
Okay.
But it's purely for registration purposes. Wala ka nang makukuha. What other uses does the
Right,
app
wala po.
actually offer? Wala, yun lang.
Right.
Talagang just for
Yun
registration.
lang po. In fact, the reason it's like that, Ma'am Lucci, is because we wanted to make sure that we absolutely did not retain any personal information. Remember, you put in personal information there. Eh? You put in
Yes.
personal information. So basically what the app does is it converts that data into a QR code. And once the conversion is complete, the data disappears. So wala na yan. Hindi mo
Okay,
yan
so-
magagamit
So
for any
Lucci,
other purpose.
Lucci walang discount. Walang discount, Lucci, ha?
Walang BTS million.
Walang BTS million.
Baka kasi,
Wala din.
Okay. Yeah, but Director
Wala.
Director Jimenez, let's go now to
Frequent
the main event. Let's go to the
Sure.
to the conduct of the elections and the conduct of campaigns. How does COVID and your assumptions affect the candidates, the voters moving forward?
The effect of COVID on the whole thing is, well, I've taken to calling it existential, no? Kasi basically talagang it really goes into the fabric of the whole thing, eh, no? Everything has changed, from registration practices to the filing of certificates of candidacy, to campaigns, to the way elections are conducted, etc. So lahat yan affected. All of it will be affected. Let's take a few examples lang, no? Number one, campaigns. Obviously, kanina si Senator Binay was talking about having to go down into the weeds, into the provinces, because there are people there who cannot access the internet, or who probably, even if they could, would not be minded to. That's true, and that's very true. But we have to take into consideration the fact na delikado yung face-to-face sa kanila. So what we're gonna do is we're going to restrict these face-to-face events, right? They're allowed, they're gonna be allowed. Obviously, there's no way you can ban them outright, but you're going to have to change the way you do it. So, example, ang standard na practice sa mga ganyang rally, mga meeting de avance, magpapakain yan. Magdi-distribute yan ng pagkain. Pagbabawalan na po natin yan. Pagbabawalan natin yan. In pre-COVID times, ang metric for a successful rally is how many people were you able to cram into the venue. Not so anymore, because now there will be strict limits on who can on how many people can be in a particular venue, whether it's open air or indoors, right? Number three, and this is very important. Dati, pag may nangyari sa event na ganyan, turuan galore. Like, hindi ako ang in charge sa pintuan, hindi ako in charge sa crowd control, etc. But our new regulations will have to make sure that lines of accountability are clear. Because if something goes wrong now, it's not just a public disturbance, it's a public health crisis. Because kung may mahawa dyan, that will really stick to the elections, no, as a stigma. So very important that the new rules will fix lines of accountability very clearly.
So when you
And
say
again,
lines
this
of
is something-
accountability, for example, will you lay down
Go ahead.
policies that owners of venues themselves or operators of venues have no reason to allow or to accept anybody applying for any political event? So once magkaroon, for example, ng rally anyway in an arena or in a sabungan or in a city hall or in a barangay basketball court, you know who is managing that and that person is accountable.
Something along those lines, yes. No? But again, it's not likely that we're going to be prohibiting events like this, but more like, pag sumobra yung dami ng tao dyan sa event na yan, sinong mananagot? So kung sino man yung accountable person according to the guidelines that we're going to put out. No? So again, it's important that we have this, and this is something that's never been done before. Because remember, up to this point, we've been regulating election propaganda mostly. No? Hindi natin i-regulate yung conduct ng mga rally. In fact, hindi sa amin ang permits to rally. No? Ang permits to rally are issued by LGUs. So we're gonna have to reach that far to make these guidelines logical and to make them make sense. Now, that's just the campaigns. Now, you're also looking at how election day is going to change. Obviously, we've talked about this before. Election day is going to be longer, right? We can't rule out multiple days of elections yet, but just think about it, and you realize that it's almost a non-starter, right? I mean, unang-una, you're gonna balloon your expenses if you're going to hold it on multiple days. Pangalawa, patutulugin mo yung balota overnight. I mean, just by that fact, no, masisira ang credibility of the election for whether or not anything happens. So obviously, it's going to be a long election day, very long. Now, aside from that, the physical arrangements will be different. Dati kasi halimbawa, one of the standing rules is that if you can fit 10 people in the polling place, you have to fit 10 people in so that they can vote sabay-sabay. This is to facilitate the process of voting, right? Para mabilis yung turnover. But now, with the pandemic, that's not something that we can do anymore. In fact, one of the more extreme suggestions is that we limit the number of people in the precinct at 5. And notice I said 5 people, not 5 voters. That's 5 people. So that's
so
3 on
kasama
the
yung bantay.
electoral board.
tatlo na kaagad. Yeah,
Isang bantay, and then isang butante.
right.
So again, that's the most extreme version, Ma'am Luch, no? But you can see where our brain is at right now. That's what we're thinking about. We're gonna finalize the rules pa, sure, of course. And in any case, the rules will not begin to come into effect until February next year. But we are working hard to meet the October psychological deadline, if you will. No?
Increasing the number of polling precincts is not an option, no?
We are. No, we are.
Oh, you
Ma'am
are?
Luch, we are. We
So
definitely
ano,
are.
hahatiin nyo yung yung existing polling precincts now, magiging instead of just one for a place, gagawin yung paano?
Hindi po ganun. Hindi po ganun. We
So, kunyari,
arrive
a
at the
school.
precincts through
Yeah.
clustering, no?
Okay.
Through clustering. So basically, we're just gonna cluster fewer than we did before. So kung dati halimbawa, ang clustered precinct natin would have a maximum of about 1,000 voters. Ngayon, we're looking at the possibility of clustering up to only 800.
So dadagdagan nyo yung site. Ganun ba yun?
So dadagdagan ng site. So kung
Oo.
dati we had around 84,000 precincts. Right now, we're projecting maybe 110, 115,000 precincts nationwide. So talagang, so dadami yung presinto, hahaba yung araw, right? And the impact of that would be, hopefully, to space people out, right? Sa pagpasok nila. Now,
Do you
there's
have
a
enough
third thing.
PCOS machines for this? Kasi kung magdadagdag
Yes,
ka
ma'am,
ng-
we do naman.
Okay.
Yeah, but there's a third thing that we're also looking at, no? Now, one of the things that we've noticed over the years is that people vote in a certain pattern. They come very early at around 6 to 7 in the morning. There's a bunch of them. And then for a long time, there's nothing. And then tanghaling tapat, maraming darating. And then 3 o'clock again, magmamadali sila. So basically, people come in waves. So that's something else that we're trying to address now. We have to spread people out. We have to even out yung dating nila. Hindi pwedeng kumpul-kumpul. Because
Kuya,
pag
assign nyo na rin.
Kasi-
Paano yung mag-i-issue kayo ng schedule kapag ganon?
Parang vaccination.
Parang vaccination, you will have to issue schedules siguro per barangay. Is that possible?
That's That's probably one way of doing it, ma'am. Marami pong mga paraan para gawin yan. And we're looking at them. Some of them are more labor intensive than others, and some of them make more sense than others at first glance. But again, tinitingnan po natin lahat yan because again, this is something that needs to be done, right? And ultimately, I must point out that it's never been done before, right? We've never bothered to do this. People come when they want to. I mean, sure, nananawagan kami, come out, vote early, etc. But beyond that, wala tayong active measures eh. Pero ngayon, we're going to have to adopt active measures for that.
How
Sir,
about
but you're
yung filing of certificates of candidacy? There's a proposal na napayagan ninyo yung online. This is in October already. Nag-firm up na
Yes,
ba
ma'am.
kayo decision dito?
Inaaral namin yan, ma'am. Actually, nagkaroon na kami ng study on online filing. And the conclusion reached by our law department was that the law would not allow it. See, the law requires personal appearance, right? But
Di
we're
ba din ba
studying we're studying po yung existing practices din, no? Like for instance, the Supreme Court has virtual
court
filing of
appearances,
affidavits, mga ganyan. Oo, 'di ba? So we're looking to see how these other methods might find application in the Comelec. This is being helped along by the fact that in a recent hearing in the Senate, parang yung mga legislators natin gustong-gusto din i-push ang online filing. So I guess if ever it comes to that and we need some amendment, I'm sure matutulungan naman kami. But bottom line, according to our study now, the existing law really doesn't allow it. Now that's the problem. When we talk about existing laws not allowing certain things because of the pandemic, we're basically talking about all laws, right? Because none of these laws were issued during the pandemic, right? So there's a lot of reworking that needs to be done. And we're coordinating naman po with Congress. So we hope that it all pans out, no? We still have time. And I guess people are not resting anymore, both in Congress and in Comelec.
Sir, let me squeeze in one more question. The pandemic is going to drive a big chunk of the campaign and therefore the spending online and into social media. I'm wondering lang how well prepared you are to monitor social media spending and campaign finance, basically, under this new normal. I think Comelec only began really officially monitoring social media spending in 2019, and that's pretty recent.
That's right. And Sir Ed, I'd love to clarify though. No, because when people talk about monitoring spending on media, actually monitoring spending in general, the image that comes to mind is of a sort of ticker, you know? Parang how much have you spent so far?
Yeah.
Umabot ka na ba sa limit, etc. Hindi po kasi ganun ang monitoring natin. Unfortunately, ang control point natin for spending is always after. Tumitingin tayo kung magkano na nagastos mo, and then we tell you kung nag-over
pasok o
ka o
hindi.
hindi. Wala tayong metro, in other words, right? So, whether or not marami ang gumamit ng social ngayon, it will pose the same challenge, right? It will pose the same challenge because wala tayong active monitoring. Doon tayo sa dulo, doon tayo sa downstream. And katulad ng dati, ang primary input natin dito ay yung SOSE. Alright? Having said that, we've already spoken with groups before, no, like Facebook, and they're a great help pagdating sa pag-identify ng mga political ads na lumabas. This allows us to back check the allegations or the claims made by the candidates as to the number of ads that they put out or what durations those ads were, for example. So ganyan.
But what
So,
about troll farms, actually? I mean, I'm just rushing it, no? But what about troll farms? I mean, how do you monitor against yung ganyang klaseng damaging campaign? Yeah.
Well, yung effect kasi ng troll farms is a different issue from the amount of money paid to troll farms. Ang nababantayan po natin yung the amount of money that's poured into the campaign. Kasi meron tayong meron tayong classification sa rules natin na tinatawag natin contractors, no? Election contractors. Ito yung mga taong tumatanggap ng pera for election
Yes.
work done online.
Mga kontrakto sila.
So, yan yung mga, dyan mo papasok yung troll. Ngayon, yung negative effect ng troll, yung kanilang impact, that's a different story altogether. No? And it's not something that we're rushing into kasi, let's face it, under the law, negative campaigning is allowed. Right? So, iba pang hiwalay na issue pa po yung disinformation. That's something that needs to be addressed, again, on a separate front. Now, one other thing that I'd like to point out, napakahalaga po, is that it's very difficult for a lot of people to grasp the idea that social media might not actually be very fair now, right? Because remember, sa social media, pag pinag-uusapan natin ng social media, you get traction pag magaling ang gamit mo sa social. Magaling ka maglabas ng content, marunong ka may ninja moves ka, no, para ma-leverage mo lahat ng social media accounts mo. Kung ikaw, pangkaraniwan tao ka lang, first time mo magagamit niyan, yung Facebook page mo, useless yan eh. Walang binatbat yan dun sa Facebook operations ng mga malalaking kandidato. So there must be something done to level up yung mga taong hindi naman bihasa sa social. Right?
Yes.
And we're collaborating with some people to help in that, as well as to provide a sort of baseline platform for everyone. Nabanggit na po ng commissioner namin dati, we're looking to building a website where every candidate will be on there, right? So that at the very least, lahat ng kandidato merong online presence. I mean, it depends on them, no, how effective that presence ultimately becomes, but at least they will be there. And that's something that we're going to try to ensure.
Okay. Comelec spokesman James Jimenez. Sir, maraming salamat for joining us tonight. At ingat po.
Maraming salamat po.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And that will be all for this Wednesday edition of The Chiefs. We hope all the discussers will keep the conversation going. Before we go, a reminder to our viewers, mask on, wash hands, and stay safe, Philippines. I'm Ed Lingao.
I'm Mami Pamintuan of the Philippine Star.
I'm Lucy Cruz Valdez of News 5.
I'm Robbie Alampay and we are One News.